Our final keynote speaker is an incredibly experienced and inspirational leader with over 20 years experience in digital marketing, e-commerce, advertising and social media within the consumer goods, technology and luxury industries. Thomas is currently the Group Digital Director at Louis Vuitton Moet & where he is responsible for the digital transformation of VMH 60+ brands, from digital strategies to e-commerce, omnichannel initiatives, and social media engagement. Prior to that, Thomas has held senior executive positions in the field of digital marketing and e-commerce at L'Oréal and Microsoft, consumer and online divisions. Thomas will give us a very interesting perspective on the impact of the digital revolution in the luxury industry and how this reflects in organizations and roles. Let us welcome Thomas Romieu.
Thank you, Gabriela. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah, this is probably, I'm afraid this is probably going to be the most boring, the least inspiring presentation in probably a century, bar maybe a few Soviet leaders' speeches in the mid-70s, maybe. Okay, why? No, don't leave. Okay, because most of what I'm going to be showing you was already expressed, was already, told by people before, for previous speakers tonight, which actually is a good thing to know, because what I'm going to be saying is probably going to be consistent with everything you've heard, so it's a good actually opportunity for me to wrap it up anyway. Okay, so stay, because there'll be just a few other details, but actually most of it was already heard tonight. Okay, so I'm going to go beyond digital. One of the reasons why I'm going to go beyond digital is that I have a graduate in literature and political science. I don't have a clue how a computer works, hardly, okay? So everything's going to be expressed in layman's terms, at least, okay? So everyone should, I guess, understand what I will be saying with my broken English tonight. So I'm going beyond digital. And the very reason why I'm going beyond digital is that, in order to mention, that's my cultural background, Magritte thing. So, ceci n'est pas une pipe, ceci n'est pas un iPhone. This is a revolution, and I think, most of our speakers actually expressed this tonight. I need to nail this down tonight. It's super important because, and like this, this is a quote from a McKinsey study. Today, 3 out of 4 luxury shoppers carry digital devices so powerful that the word phone barely describes them. And I think it's an incredibly important revolution that's going on with the vast adoption of smartphones from users, particularly from luxury buyers. Google mentioned something that was very interesting tonight, and Martin said, there's now continuous computing going on. Forrester Research calls it the always addressable customer, or the always on customer. And actually, when he mentioned that, search queries, that most queries now, the majority of queries are now done from a mobile phone, and it's actually, it's been so since probably August of 2014. It's exactly what we're seeing on our sites. The real change was mid-2014. It looks like now more visits actually come from mobile phones than from computers or tablets. And if you've seen tablets, there's an interesting evolution for tablets that they plateaued somehow, tablets. Whereas smartphones continue to boost. Continuing to quote Google, I think that you would find that their 2014 studies on affluent buyers is very inspiring, very interesting, and will show you that on average luxury buyers carry over 3.7 devices as opposed to about 3 devices on average for the general population. So the cliche about luxury buyers not being fully digital is just a cliche, so it's wrong. And actually they carry more digital devices than the general population. So if I switch to the next slide, I told you about the always-on customers, and what these guys will expect is an integrated experience. And this is going to actually be broken out into 4 different sections. Easy to understand because most of this was already mentioned tonight. Okay, I'm just recapping. That's all I do. Okay. So the first one is I research online and I complete my purchase in store. And it's probably the most important one. If you just have to do one thing, it's probably one thing that I would strongly suggest we do. Why? Because guess what? In the luxury world at least, most sales will still happen in a store. And for various reasons, which you can imagine, price point is actually rather high, so you want to make sure that you can try the stuff, alteration, and all this. So basically, this is a super important variable. You won't win an award in Cannes Festival or anything like this by doing research online, purchase offline. It's probably the dullest thing in the world, but it's what matters to your consumers. And again, I want to still stress the fact that in our nascent industry, a lot of silly things are said sometimes. It's normal, as we mentioned before, innovation is everywhere. So we need to very strongly focus on what our customers are shouting we should do for them. And it's a fact of life that most interactions with any digital touchpoint will happen on the good old dull brand website. And it's not me saying, it's anything that anyone can track on ComScore, for example, or by checking what people search on Google Trends, for example, which is a free tool. So say that more, according to all the studies, say that for 50 to 80% of store purchases, have started with some kind of, search on a search engine, and then people went to the good old website, checked the products, checked the price, checked the store locator as well, which is a very strongly overlooked feature on all sites. And if you do this really well, you're fine. And we talked about execution before, and it's a big topic of ours. Another thing that I would suggest, back to what Google was presenting, Martin didn't mention it, but I want to mention it for you guys because it's probably one of the most inspiring studies I've ever read, and it's called ZMOT, Google ZMOT, Zero Moment of Truth. This study, I think, was published in something like 2012. They constantly update it, and it actually will show you that between a stimulus, which is advertising, and the fact that people, and the first moment of truth, that Procter & Gamble, developed, over, I guess, probably 40 years ago, there now is a zero moment of truth, which is exactly what I described before. With the advent of the internet, people are going to be searching for you online, they want to find your website, and they'll prepare a subsequent store purchase. So that's one. The second one is I also buy online, and it's a fact that even in our industry, e-commerce is a rising concern and rising expectation from people. As Martin mentioned again, convenience is probably the driver of e-commerce and why people will actually, trade, a store visit for e-commerce. I think that who mentioned for e-commerce the 10,000-pound watch, the Selfridges lady, I think it's Claire, who mentioned, the fact that you can purchase, very high-priced items online now, and it's a fact that, it's no longer a very strong hurdle. And so e-commerce is really picking. And of course, it could be picking from monobrands websites together with anything that happens with wholesale, starting with a Sephora or, of course, department stores. Oops. Sorry. CCTV, that's the UK. I need to get used to it. I'm French. They didn't import animals. So the third one is I check opinions and I share comments and go online for after-sales queries. It's a very important topic because it's not about chasing Facebook fans. We need to be a bit more mature than that. So what it means is that, yes, it's a fact that we no longer control what's being said online. But it's also a fact that these social media can have a very significant influence. Again, Claire, for Selfridges, mentioned Instagram. Mariana mentioned complaints on social media, which actually is a very important thing. A recent study by McKinsey, the economist, showed that for affluent buyers with revenues over $200,000 a year, which is okay, the preferred way of contacting customer service is social media. because it's no longer email, no longer the phone, it's social media. So what's very important when any brand opens a presence on social media is that they be aware that, as McLuhan said, the medium is the message, which means that the implicit contract that will happen when you open a presence on social media is that there's going to be a two-way relationship. It's not advertising. It's about dialogue. And all brands should be aware that people will start, to try to contact them, particularly for customer service queries or any, comment, and that there should be someone listening on the other end. The best industries, the ones that actually have developed the highest, share of answers to queries are airlines, not surprisingly. And I invite you to check what, the barometer, if it's the right word, that Social Bakers actually created to show, how various industries are not getting involved in answering people's queries on social media. Last but not least, online or offline, is it relevant? Just give me all options to shop. So we heard a lot about this omni-channel theme tonight. So let me mention a few things that were expressed. We talked about seamless experience. We talked about attribution, is a word we heard a lot because yes, it's tricky. What we heard also is that for John Lewis, Lewis, 56% of sales were done, through click and collect, which is definitely this combination and merging of online and offline experience. We heard about the Sephora app from your mom, Nicola, and we're very happy because Sephora happens to be an LVMH company, so it's great for us. Thank you. Keep up the good work. And we heard, but we also heard Matt saying that it should be done very well for each customer. And guess what? It's very complicated. What's involved in the back end, to create an omnichannel experience is very, very complicated. And yes, beyond luxury, lots of industries are now still fighting to make this happen. So, with these integrated experiences, online versus offline boundaries will blur and will become irrelevant. This is a little rubber. It's supposed to be funny. Thank you. So it's erasing. It's a kind of symbol that shows that. I know it's cheesy. Okay, fine. So it's just I love. It cost me a lot actually to do this slide because I subcontracted it, so I'm going to do it again. Just divided the cost by 2, it's fine. So yeah, this is showing you that the boundaries between online and offline are blurring somehow. So this is the new customer journey, customer path, as a lot of consultancies like McKinsey, BCG are actually, using this term, but they're very right. There's a multiplication of touch points. So if you think of the most common one is actually in bold here. So it shows you that you're going to be stimulated by an ad to be inspired. You'll visit the site for information, and then you'll go to a store. It's the research online, purchase offline I was telling you before. Yet, you're seeing a lot of, other ways of interacting with brands. Online order, order in-store collection. The John Lewis 56% is actually here. So what you need to actually remember from this slide is the multiplication of touch points. And what this means is that at the end of the day, these integrated experiences are going to require excellence, consistency across all touch points. And you're seeing that, we have great products, we have great image, we have great experience, and we're back to what was, mentioned today as far as seamless experience, as far as attribution, as far as providing as beautiful an experience as possible. We heard this word as well. And it's complicated because you have all these series of various different experiences, and you have to analyze them. So actually, customer analytics is starting to be more and more complicated, and finding experts is extremely hard as well because no one was trained at school on this type of disciplines. And Jerry Belmore, the ad guru, said, "Consumers build brands' image of a brand like birds build nests, from scraps and straws that chance upon." And I love this word. This was said in the 50s. But you can imagine, the things were much simpler in the 50s. You can imagine how complicated it is now. So the most important thing here is to make sure that we still provide consistent luxury experiences across all these touch points. And what it raises, which actually might be the little insight that I might bring to you tonight, is that it's going to very, very strongly impact organizations and roles. So what you're seeing here is actually a Neiman Marcus reorg. with new top management roles, and general merchandise managers, divisional merchandise managers, and planners will have omni responsibilities covering the stores, mail order, and e-commerce businesses. It looks like everything's coming together, and it looks like all this, historical silos. I'm sorry to use a very big cliche, but it's a fact of life. A lot of silos within organizations are being questioned because consumers now have this 360 view of our businesses, which we don't necessarily have on our own business, which actually is a big issue given the fact that all these, different contacts can happen in a very different way. Lastly, I have a last insight, okay, and then you can go to bed, and I'm tired because there's a 1 hour difference with Paris, so I'm supposed to be sleeping now, actually. But there's a last insight in case you guys don't sleep yet. I love the Angela Arendt's, quote, you need to surprise and delight your consumers. And, the French philosopher Alain said, once said, penser, c'est dire non. Thinking is saying no. So in some cases, you always have to question stuff and say, what's my consumer thinking, particularly in the luxury world? It's slightly different. When I joined LVMH, had lunch with a human resource director, I was freaking out, okay? I wore a tie for the first time in the last 10 years and all that stuff. And he said, in the luxury world, it's like the laws of Newtonian physics don't apply anymore. Somehow I was like, oh wow, that's very impressive. And it's a fact, it's very specific products. And imagine that when anyone, is recognized in any Walmart or any Tesco's of the world or any Monoprix in France, 10 meters before they enter a store, and when, sales rep actually serves some kind of, canned speech about, oh, great, thank you for your last purchase, Wednesday, April 14th, and we hope that your 7-year-old kids, is happy and all that stuff. When this is performed everywhere, what might be required from a sales interaction could be totally different. And it's just me thinking, okay? So don't think that it's, any doctrine of any kind, but I'm just thinking out loud with you guys. And what if in 2020, especially given the fact that personal data protection is going to be a big issue, by the way, what if this, was a likely scenario? I don't know. I'm just leaving it to you. So Ling here wants to make a present to her husband. Before entering the store, she receives a notification on her smartphone. By default, she won't be identified. Okay, don't make me wrong. We're fine with modernity. But unlike her experience at the supermarket, where the staff's attitude towards her is automatically based on her top customer status, she has the pleasure of interacting with a salesperson who does not have any database information about her. She rediscovers the simple experience of a genuine selling ceremony. And you know what? What we do is exceptional products and with exceptional craftsmanship. In most cases, the very usability of the product can be had with any subpar product. It's fine, It's just that we add to this the craftsmanship, the exceptional quality, the je ne sais quoi that most industrial brands just don't do. And at the end of the day, this is what might happen, if we think of the way the luxury industry will stand out versus the other industries. Could be totally the other way around. Could be a totally individualized, algorithm-based experience. But what I wanted to leave you with was the necessity of making sure that penser, c'est dire non, and that you question everything and always have your customer in mind when thinking of any new idea. And prioritize as well, because on the internet you can do everything, which means you can spoil everything, and which means you also can execute extremely poorly, which is the last thing we want. Thank you very much for your attention.
You're talking kind of about how things could possibly change in the next 5 years in terms of this customer maybe wanting a less personal or a more personal experience, we're not sure. What are you at LVMH doing to prepare for that? And how are you trying to figure out which version of that reality is actually going to come to pass?
You know, we have an amazing range of brands, so there's no one-size-fits-all answer to this question. The most important thing is to make sure that, you know, there's this, I don't know, I think it's a Chinese saying that says, only dead fish, you know, swim within the path or the stream, whatever. So the most important thing is to make, I know, it's, you know, it's bad, okay, it's okay. You know. If it were a French saying, we'd say it's only dead fish can be, you know, eaten with a good sauce. And it's not a French saying. So the most important thing is to always figure out what our customers want. Now, you know, this being said, I was very impressed and you know, by how, you know, similar somehow all industries look like. Actually, the luxury industry with maybe the press industry. Back in the fall of 2011, The Economist published a special report on the evolution of media. Back to the Coffee House was actually on the very cover of The Economist. Find it because it was a great, you know, a great report. And what it said is that back in the 17th century or 18th century, you know, the advent of coffee houses led to the publication of labels in a little, you know, very little newspapers, very low circulation, and people would actually exchange ideas within cafes. In the 19th century, you know, the advent of the, you know, of mass circulation, you know, newspapers led to this globalization of the press and the fact that a two-way conversation whereby journalists would literally visit their clients with the coffee led the way to a one-way conversation whereby the news would tell you what is to be thought. And, you know, what the special report was saying is now we're back to the coffee house in 2011 because journalism has changed big time and the treatment of news has changed big time because everyone can be a journalist and anyone can interact with a journalist, you know, and it's something that everyone has, you know, experienced when reading a newspaper online, for example, and interacting with news, generally speaking. And I think that for all industries, and including our industries, that's currently what's happening. We're back to the coffee house. Or we're back to where our founders actually, you know, were when they created their own, you know, brands and had to actually interact with a few dozen, you know, patrons, literally. And I think that all industries are actually, you know, concerned. But it's, you know, it's back to the coffee house on steroids. So the real question will be to which extent do we have a clever usage of data. Privacy is a major issue, and we want to make sure that we cut, you know, the right line. And honestly, it's going to depend from one brand to another. The only thing that I think is the most, you know, the thing that I think is most important is to make sure that people understand what's out there, what's possible, and then can interact with it. One other, you know, interesting thing, and something that you could be using regardless of the question you ask, is what Forrester calls the POST methodology: people, objective, strategy, and technology. Think of what people want, your customers. Think of what your objectives are. Think of what strategy you then implement to make it happen, and then lastly, use the technology. My main concern is that in many cases, a lot of, you know, companies we interact with overall, and lots of, you know, observations I have, is that people are going to stick to an upcoming technology and then try to derive a customer usage. I don't think it's the right way to go.
Thomas, thank you for presentation. So the key message is that probably our customers use devices like more and more often. However, there is another part of this business that we can discuss now. Actually, sales representatives in offline shops also use smartphones and tablets and iPads more and more often. Could you tell a bit? Could you talk a bit about the future of this trend? So what are the new opportunities, or
Yes.
what like new services are we going to see soon?
I'm still quoting The Economist. You know, as a French, you guys should be happy. There was a very good special report on mobile phones a few weeks ago, and it was referring to something that, as a French, I don't know, but as probably the British will know, is that there's this kind of sci-fi show during which people have actually a second brain in their left hand for some reason, and it's supposed to be funny, but it's probably things I don't understand anyway. So, but basically, what this means is that people now have a second brain in their left hand. Bottom line. And what's been happening in the last few years, particularly in Apple stores, is that you've had people who actually were carrying smartphones or any type of device, actually, which actually do four main things. The first one is, yes, there is customer information when customers needs them, and the Sephora example was a very telling example. The second one is you're going to have product information in there to provide even additional information to people, because make no mistake, people more often than not, people show up in your store knowing more about the products than sales representatives. The third information is where the product can be located. Is it in this store? Is it in another store? And can it be ordered? Can it be sent to my home? It's we talked about click and collect, but another very important aspect of omnichannel is endless aisle, which means that in some cases, the item is not going to be in store. It's going to be less and less acceptable that customer service, that sales reps don't find a solution so it can be shipped to your home. And the fourth information that this device is going to carry, that this additional brain is going to carry, is everything that pertains to sales rep productivity. In other words, when the person is idle, she'll be able to do her training, check her schedules, shifts, and plan their vacation, especially if they're French. Yes?
So Thomas, what you just described to me as a consumer is me getting rid of a sales assistant. What is the future of a sales assistant? And maybe that differentiator is, in your case, still having a sales associate, whereas in the supermarket there just is no sales associate, and I'm really happy.
It's very it's very difficult to provide any kind of broad answer here. But what I know for a fact is that stores are here to stay, big time. I think they will change, obviously, but they're here to stay, and I think that sales associates are going to be more critical than ever. They will be carrying these type of devices, but their ability, back to our point, to engage in a very relevant, emotional relationship is going to be more critical than ever. And therefore, I think that they're going to be a crucial part of the experience. Now, this being said, as mentioned for Click and Collect, which is extremely big in the UK, it looks like their job is going to change, of course. And in some cases, they will be asked to prepare parcels, for example, which is not necessarily what they did before, and to even give away a parcel, which is a new task. So obviously, retail is being transformed, but I do believe that the human interaction is going to remain a critical part.
Hi. Just a quick question. How do you bring your craftsmen with you? Because all of this is multiplying the number of units that you sell and the number of brands that are produced. But the real scarcity is making those things. And how do you ensure that that remains something that is as unique as you want to portray? Your craftsmen. So we're talking about doing all of these things and being more connected and selling more and more. But luxury goods are still produced by hand, and how do you ensure that this remains the key selling point about the brands that you represent?
I think that this is not going away, by any means. I think that there was a very interesting conversation a few minutes ago about does digital render images right? And we saw the Google image of '98. Of course, it's changed a lot, and of course, experiences are changing a lot as well because we have 4G access. Screens are much better. Retina screens, for example, on Apple. Computers are great and all that stuff. This being said, I think the most critical asset for any kind of digital presence is the fact that real estate is virtually free. I mean, the marginal cost of developing a web page is virtually nothing. Of course, we could go through. We could be doing videos. It's a fact. Now, let's face the fact. It's also expensive. So my point is that back to your point, the very way we can express great craftsmanship, paradoxically, if I may say, via an online presence, is by leveraging the ability of doing great, of using our website's real estate, and of conveying these stories, for example, on social media and sharing what we do, which is obviously something that was more challenging to do 25 years ago, not because we didn't want to do it, but because when addressing, when telling these stories, you had to buy advertising. And of course, we still buy advertising, don't get me wrong. We now have a way of ensuring that anyone who wants to know about our brands can. There are about 3 queries per second for Louis Vuitton on any search engine. Every second I speak. It's likely that these people are looking for some Louis Vuitton information. And of course, Louis Vuitton is amazing, but if I take Zenith watches, we have 1 query every 8 seconds, which is significant as well. It's an amazing opportunity for us to engage these people and to make sure that they spend some time with us, which by and large they do, because people spend between 2 and 10 minutes on fashion website, on luxury websites, depending on the category overall.
I think a lot of the discussions this evening were with the assumption that a lot of the luxury customers are young and tech savvy, but the reality also is that we have an aging population, and you will probably be able to say more in terms of most of the luxury customers are not really teenagers, they're a little older. So would you be able to say something more about what you think the trends will be with your group companies, with this aging population, and any words around that?
I think that by and large, this distinction between so-called digital natives and digital immigrants is going away. It's fading away. There's very little difference in people's behaviors in the habits I showed before. Very, very little. Admittedly, there's more usage of smartphones from teenagers. It's a fact. But as far as our customers are concerned, they're way more connected now. So I no longer think it's an issue. It probably was 10 years ago. I don't think it's an issue anymore.
Very quick one. Do you think this evolution on the digital side is affecting the way brands like luxury brands actually create further down the line? So I was asking, do you think this evolution in the digital age is affecting the way you actually design products? As a Louis Vuitton brand, you'd think maybe you don't look at what the consumer want, but you just believe in the creativity of your craftsman. Do you think this digital age feedback you might get even by internet might affect the actual creation of the product?
My background is has been working on digital developments in the last 15 years, so I can't answer this question literally. It's impossible. Honestly, I don't know, okay? The only thing that I know is that oftentimes the mistake that's done on digital acceleration or digital revolution, or however it's called within large corporations, besides luxury, okay? Besides luxury. 99% of what I showed to you, applies to any industry. But the most important thing is that digital is a means and not an end. You have a strategy. Digital is only here to help you implement the strategy, period. And sometimes digital is thought of as something specific, and it's not. It is definitely dependent on what your strategy is going to be like. The tail doesn't wag the dog. And in other words, I don't know which brands, what products, which brands are going to be developing. The only thing I know is that the internet is going to be an enabler to engage customers on their customer journeys, period.
Isn't there a contradiction with that? You say, Henry Ford said if I'd asked people what they wanted, they would have said, I want a faster horse.
Yes.
Sorry, so I was just saying Henry Ford said if I asked people what they wanted, they would have said I wanted a faster horse. Isn't that true for you as well? That if you start with the people, you're not innovating the same way. If you're trying to listen to the people, you're not giving them the very best, like a car did, like Henry Ford gave us a car.
Probably is, but the only thing, the only thing that I want to focus upon at that stage is to make sure that, the very basic stuff that's everywhere, that everyone talked about tonight, be implemented as you know, as honestly and as you know, and in as pristine a way as possible. That's all I care about at that stage. You know, what you're saying is obviously interesting, but it you know, it takes me very, you know, away from where I think the industry stands overall, and it's not me saying, you know, it's any report you can read about it. You done? I was reading the 1 minute sign, so we're done. Thank you.